What if it's not about a building? What if it's not about stained glass and steeples? What if it's just Jesus?
All right, Cory, it's back at it, man. It's just a little bit different today.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah, so a little bit different today. We actually have a guest with us today, and there's a spin on that guest. It's someone actually pretty special to me. It's going to be my sister, Savannah. And Savannah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
Yeah, so, man, I can't wait to let this unravel and see where it goes because, Cory, I would imagine that you can't remember a time in your childhood that you didn't go to church.
I mean, as far back as I can remember, I was rolling under the pews trying to sleep right in the middle of services as just a little 3-4-year-old. I've always been in church.
Wow, so that's amazing, but it's so different than what I remember as a child. Savannah, can you even remember a time as a child that we went to church?
Never.
Yeah, so we grew up in a military family. We traveled a lot. We were, I don't want to say disconnected from our community,
That's
but we
where
were.
you get your OCD from. Military man.
Yeah, so we were always busy, and it never felt like we had the time to establish like a home church. I wouldn't say that we were not religious, but I wouldn't say we were religious either.
No. I mean, it wasn't really talked about. It's not like it was a thing.
Yeah, and no one ever said it wasn't real, but we never talked about it either.
Mm-mm.
It's positive and it's negative because obviously you need to hear about Jesus. But on the other hand, there's so many things in traditional churches where they have so many customs and so many traditions that sometimes you can get caught up in them more than you do the big picture, Jesus and saving souls. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of positives about not being wrapped up in that and God having his perfect time to intervene in your lives to say, okay, it's time.
You know, I feel like for me, this being a new journey for me and everything is really starting, being an adult, I'm almost 40 years old, that is terrifying to jump into this when I wasn't raised that way.
Right. So I started my journey, my walk of faith about a whole year ago, and I kind of started telling you and inviting you to the things that I was going to, but man, it really has to be your time. It
I was
really
very
has to click.
unreceptive.
Yeah.
I went to one, just Jesus, and then that's all I'll come to.
Yeah.
Right, because it's not your time, and Cory talks a lot that a lot of times broken people come to faith. They reach out to Jesus. They look for that. I know that wasn't my story, and I would imagine it's probably not yours, but something clicks with a person that really just brings it out like, I need to find Jesus. If Jesus is real, now is my time to find him.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
That's the grace and the beauty of serving God because you said it's a petrifying thing to come into it later in your life because you've never heard anything about it, you never learned anything about it. But God knows that. And God knows exactly how to send you certain people and certain situations that you would go through to bring you into it by baby steps. Like you're actually becoming his child. And he begins to cover you with grace, to just give you the right tools to figure it all out. You don't have to do it all at once. And it's like I said, increments. He knows how to do that. It's amazing. He's a great, great God, full of mercy, full of grace. And every bit of that comes every day fresh.
Savannah, so fast forward in just a little bit. I talked to you sometime this week. I don't remember when it was. And I called you about something unrelated to church, unrelated to Jesus. And what did you tell me in that conversation?
I said, well, I started a Bible study group. I was invited by some of the school moms. And so I know these women. It's a great, comfortable place. So I started the Bible study. Well, my second week, I said, well, I told my Bible study that I didn't think I believed in God.
Right. And I've mentioned some of this stuff before to you, and you were just like, oh, that's so great for you. Yeah, I'm so glad. Never did you actually express like, wow, I can't believe you believe that because I'm not sure that I do. And I know you used to not. We used to bond on that. So this is kind of awkward. But like your kids, I mean, you took them, you got them I don't remember if they got baptized or what is it they do to them?
They were baptized. They got sprinkled, christened.
Okay, yeah, there you go. That's the word.
And I sent my girls to a Christian school, and that was something that was really important to Lane and I to do because I want them to have a basis, even though I didn't have that. I want them to have that.
Right. So it's so natural to, I don't want to say fake it, but it's easier
Mm-hmm.
to go with the flow than to put those brakes up and say, whoa, hold on. My kids need to believe this, but I'm not sure that I do.
Yes. And that's what I sat through my first whole week of Bible study. I sat there and I smiled and I prayed and I did all the things and I was essentially pretending.
Yeah,
The entire time I was pretending because in my mind, it was just processing, how are they just blindly following? Where's this,
Right.
this belief?
And that's something me and Corey's talked about a lot is indoctrination. And we'll get into that deeper maybe on this podcast, but definitely on upcoming podcasts because that's so huge in someone's eyes like me or you.
It is.
The thing is, too, is that it's just like you said. You came to the Bible study. You was kind of confused and kind of like, man, how is this? How are they just flowing with this, talking about this? And it's so new to me and it's so kind of uncomfortable. But see, look, you're sitting here in this podcast talking about Jesus in a different way, in a more laid back setting. This is what God does.
I never intended to come out in my Bible study because I had told my friend Kelly all of my thoughts after the first study. This is how I feel. You know who I am. And I had never intended voicing that. But in the Bible study, they were all talking about how God was speaking to them. And my Bible study leader, which happens to be a great friend, was saying that God speaks to her. So I just kind of spoke up. How do you know? How do you know God's speaking to you? What does that sound like?
Right.
Because I don't think he spoke to me.
Yeah. So funny story. I actually told a family friend of ours that I used to work with, hey, listen to the podcast because I know she's a really religious person. She used to pray before meals and she still does, I'm sure, but we never communicated and bonded through that. But one time she'd mentioned to me, hey, God spoke to me. And I remember almost laughing and saying, hold on. When he does that, do you hear him or do you... How does that work?
That's exactly what I said at Bible study. Do you hear him? Like, is he speaking out loud? How do you know? Or how do you know that's not just your subconscious?
Right. And when I told her about this podcast, she texted me immediately after and said, hey, do you remember? I said, oh, yeah, I remember.
The great thing about it is I've never heard anybody talk about this like what I'm about to say. People don't know, like, first of all, how to even connect with God. God is this big invisible force. And the thing is, he really does talk to you and he really can. And if you're never around it, if you're never taught, if you're never, getting the word of God from the Bible and somebody's teaching you these things, you never will understand it. You can never hear God. You've got so many voices. And I don't mean that in, like we're all crazy, but we are all crazy. But we do have voices. You'll hear like your grandmother say things that, or your dad or somebody in your family from voices of reason and voices of advice. And you'll hear your own self. You'll talk to yourself and have conversations. Am I the only one that does that?
At this point, I want to tell you yes. Just
okay, good. Well, the thing is that when you go through this trial and error, for somebody like me who's been in it for years, it is literally like, take a moment right now. Even the people that will hear this and listen, take a moment and just say any phrase, any sentence in your mind right now. Just say something and take a minute. Say that sentence to yourself. You got it? Think about that for a moment and the way that sounds, and that is exactly the voice that God can use to speak to you. And if that sounds crazy, it's okay. But God will show you in ways and transformations in your life of how when it's you and when it's Him, and there will be a feeling of this is much heavier than just me saying something. God will give you a force of conviction in yourself internally to know when it's Him and when it's not. Many times in the Bible, those men that talked to God, they were called prophets back in even the old days. These men, even today in the New Testament or in biblical times, God talked to those men, and we are no different. God talked to those men. God's the same God, and He's still talking to us. We just need to know how to hear Him and how to follow that.
Man, Cory, that was perfect. That was the problem that I had growing my faith, is I didn't know what that sounded like. I didn't know what that looked like, and how can I distinguish me from Him? And when I talked to you the other day, Savannah, that's kind of where you were at.
Mm-hmm.
And I was saying, you just have to take these leaps of faith
Mm-hmm.
and take the journey to find out where it leads, to give it an opportunity to talk to you.
Mm-hmm. So anytime I've ever had a problem or issue in my life, Stephen is always the first person I call, regardless if it's just Jesus, anything. What shoes should I wear? What do you think about this?
Me too.
I always call him for everything. I feel like he's one of the smartest people that I know,
I
because
wish that was true.
if you don't know the answer, you know someone that will, or you'll research it. So he told me this, and I told him, they recommended a book, and, I started reading it. And so he told me, he said, well, I actually just started this podcast. I didn't even know that it was live yet. So he sent me the link, and you had just posted it like that morning.
That's right, our very first episode.
Yes. So I thought, okay, so I started it. I was 4 minutes in and I paused it and I called Steven and I said, this is exactly how I feel. These are all of my questions. It was like I talked to you, you made the podcast, and then you put it out there, because that was exactly what I was feeling. Everything that I needed to express was there.
And you left off a key factor to that. You said you had goosebumps.
Yes. I was driving in the car and I literally had goosebumps all over my arms.
That's exactly, I know that it sounds crazy. There's so many times you can feel that, but that's the same thing in the body physically that God will use. Just like you felt those goosebumps. That wasn't just goosebumps. That was God giving you confirmation that, hey, I'm walking with you right now.
There was definitely, you talk about, I need a sign. How can I believe?
Yes.
I felt like that podcast was my sign. And, of all the people, I never in a million years would have thought that my brother would be the one that would help me along in this journey.
Wow, that's all of us here, I assure you.
I know. I mean, I never thought that you would be the one that would kind of help guide me. And I talked about, having blind faith. How do you believe if you're learning this from your parents when you're growing up, when you're, indoctrinated that way? We were not. You trust everything that your parents are telling you and teaching you to believe is true.
Yeah.
And, we didn't have that. So I feel like that if along my journey, if my brother feels that way and he shared his journey with me, then I want to believe 100%, because I believe him.
Yes, and look how amazing that is, that you had such a close help to your life. Like, he wasn't in it, just like you wasn't in it. He wasn't about it. He wasn't about God. I mean, he cussed me out the first time I talked to him about Jesus.
Oh my goodness. I know, the story's amazing.
Yeah, I love it. And the thing is, we don't even know how close God is to us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't realize, like, He is so close. He's not just this big colossus God that is twirling around the orbiting planets on his finger. He knows sensitively how to move in close to us. We don't know the answers. You said blind faith.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other faith. It's only blind faith. We talked about it the last podcast. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, but the evidence of things not seen. God doesn't want you to have it all figured out. A matter of fact, when you start trying to make sense of it and you start trying to make it logical in your own mind, it ain't no more God.
That's my problem. I want, I've looked for literal answers. I want it all to be logical and literal and lay it all out for me scientifically. And I'm learning that that's not how it is.
No.
Right. There's somebody listening right now that's thinking in the back of their head, oh no, well, goosebumps, that's because of this, this, and this. That's not God. That's a scientific reason. Just like rainbows. That's not from God. There's a scientific reasons when moisture and sun hit that it creates a rainbow. Yeah, but who made all that?
Yeah.
Let's not get so literal that we lose our concept of faith and what we actually believe, because if we try to make sense of everything, eventually we will. It's confirmation bias. Is we can look for whatever we want to and find that it's true. That's the beauty of the internet, right?
Yeah. I love it that you said rainbow too, because that is the first time that rainbow was ever mentioned in the Bible, was in the beginning with Noah and the flood. And that was a promise, a confirmation from God, the rainbow that he showed them as a sign. So God has already used these things over and over, like the things we mentioned, the way God moves on us and goosebumps and all these things that we just think, oh, you heard a great song, or oh, you seen something inspirational and it gave you goosebumps. That's okay. But God, just like you can hear voices in your mind, you need to know, and I need to know when that's God and when it's you. And as time goes on, as we study, as we listen, as we learn the things of God, we will learn by trial and error, blind faith, as you mentioned, that it's God. Oh, this was God. And then something great happens and it's amazing. And you're like, you look back at so many times that you were down and you were broken and you didn't know how you were going to make it out. And you look back and you say, that was God. That was God there with me.
I feel like me hearing your podcast, that was God. That was a sign.
Literally, what are the
Definitely.
chances?
Exactly. I mean, that's not something you planned for. There's not a scientific answer that he had this queued up and ready for me.
Right. I didn't tell you about the podcast. I didn't even tell you we were doing it because
I had no idea.
I didn't want to push this on anybody. I didn't want someone to blindly support me because, oh, good job. Yeah, that's a great podcast. No, that's not what I want. I want people that are looking for Jesus, looking for God, to listen to this podcast and think, man, this is for me. And it just so happened, as you were telling me your problems with communicating with God and faith, I was like, wait a minute.
You answered all those questions in the first 4 minutes.
You need to listen to our podcast. So I'm just like you. You're always looking for that confirmation. Like, okay, I can put myself out there. I can say this. I can do this. I can take these leaps of faith. I can get baptized. But at some point, I need something. And for me, God knew that. I talked to God in so many different ways and so many different times that eventually he didn't communicate back with me in words, but man, I had dreams. I had things.
Wow, we really need to talk about those dreams, man.
I just heard about those. I asked him, how did you start your journey? Like, I mean, I feel like you went from one extreme to the other. How in the world did you get there?
Right. Literally by God telling me, here's what you're going to do.
Exactly.
Just to break down my dreams in a short thing, the very first one I had was the night before I got baptized.
Please get ready for this, people. This is going to blow your mind.
I'm standing in front of a black wall that's almost fuzzy like a white noise, but it was black, right?
Now, wait a minute. Have you ever had a dream? Did you ever remember dreaming anything ever in your life before, really?
No, I don't have dreams.
He's never told me about a dream when we were growing up.
No, I never had them. I never did. And if I did, I don't remember them.
Okay, so we all understand we don't have control over what we dream. So this just is amazing to me, and what happened to you in that situation and before.
Right. I've only dreamed 3 times at this point, well, that I remembered. And these were pretty simultaneously within a couple weeks.
Wow.
So the one was before I got baptized. Like I said, I'm standing in front of a blurry black wall, and I'm talking to it. And I said, hey, tomorrow I'm getting baptized. I don't know where you're going to go or what you're going to do, but you got to go. And the wall speaks back, and not even a voice. I just know that it's talking, if that makes sense. And it says, we got nowhere to go. Where are we going to go? And the only thing I've responded is, I don't know, but you better figure it out. In my dream, the night before I got baptized, literally facing the wall of demons that I didn't know existed. And I wake up the next morning, man. You're the first phone call I said, man, I don't know what this means, but I'm definitely getting baptized. So we went all day, and we went that night, and you actually baptized me in your sister's pool, and man, it was
And your family.
right. My whole family, everyone went there, and everyone didn't have intentions of doing it, but man, it's so powerful in the way that God works. And a lot of people can easily say, oh, that's just because you were thinking about it. Oh, that was just in your subconscious. There's ways
Did you
that
planned on this prior to?
um
Did you know the day before you were going to get baptized
Yes.
the next day?
yeah, and
Yes.
so
we had
you
been
asked,
talking about it.
you'd asked previously, like, why? Why did you decide to
Yeah.
get baptized? So, like I said, it's all about taking those leaps of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I read the Bible, the more I studied, and man, for me, the New Testament is where it's at. Is where I really clicked with all those people. I could see myself like, wow, if I was there, like I would strive to be an apostle. I would follow them around and do everything I could just to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you read it and you think the first thing he did with all of them was baptize them.
Yeah.
So now, why would I not go ahead and get baptized, take that leap of faith,
Mm-hmm.
tell God and Jesus, hey, I'm here. I'm taking my steps. Give me something back. Not that it's all about me, but wow, I can only take so many leaps of faith before I get something in return.
Show me I'm on the right path.
That's right. That's it.
People don't,
I love that.
and most people don't even realize because we don't read or we don't know or we haven't been around it. In Acts, the 2nd chapter, there was many people moved by everything that was happening by faith and what Jesus had done by dying on the cross. And Peter the apostle, he got up and began to preach about that. And there were people that were moved and touched and convicted, and they actually said, what do we do? How do we get saved?
Mm-hmm.
And Peter said this, 2 things. He said, repent, which means to turn, to stop. Most people just think that's saying, I'm sorry. No, you're walking a life that's your own choices. You're doing it yourself. You're bearing it alone. And now you're going to stop moving that direction and you're going to do an about face and start walking toward God and saying, God, I've tried it myself. I'm turning it all to you. I'm asking Jesus to come into my heart to be my Savior. And at that point, Peter, what he said was, repent
Mm-hmm.
and be baptized. Every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ, for the remission of sin, and then you shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit.
That makes so much sense because I feel, being so new, I want this so much. I want to believe, but I felt like I had to get there before I could get baptized.
Oh man,
That's
you
right.
did. You did, and nobody realizes that. But it's because we'll jump up and down like crazy heathens, like go Vols and all these things we do, watching sports and stuff. But when it comes to Jesus, when it comes to worshiping, that's all he wants is for us to take our eyes off the world, to take our eyes off of what anybody thinks and just come into a place of praise and worship and acknowledgement that he is the reason I am here.
So I just have to be ready with an open heart. I don't have to have all the answers.
That's right. That's 100% right. And like I said, I took that leap of faith.
Right.
I got baptized based on what I was reading. I was like, well, if this is real,
Yeah.
if I'm really going down this path, here's my next leap of faith. And let me tell you what happened after that. So, and the time frame, I skipped one dream and I'll move to the next one. This is after I got baptized. About a week later,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in an old rowboat. It's old wooden.
This was so powerful when you told me.
Yeah, I'm in an old wooden rowboat. I've got 2 paddles, one in each hand. I'm sitting down. I'm all by myself in the middle of this water that's nothing but water as far as you can see in any direction. I'm by myself.
And this boat is like very ancient,
Oh,
right?
yeah, it's all wood.
It's
It,
like
like,
almost like a
primitive.
biblical time.
That's right. Yeah, all wood. And all of a sudden I've got this huge hole in the very front of my boat and it's taken on all this water. And the first thing I do is start looking in all directions. Someone's got to be here to help me. And there's nobody. No matter where I look, there's not a soul to be found. And my boat's just taking on all this water. And I look back forward at the hole, and all I see is Jesus literally laying down, elbow on the boat, on his side, in full motion of patching the hole in my boat. Literally patching the hole in my boat with some type of putty. And he doesn't say a word. He just looks at me as he's moving that putty and covering that hole. And all the water in my boat disappeared. And I was as healthy and happy and just keep on rowing with not
He
a worry
just
in the world.
looked at you like everything's going to be
Yeah,
fine.
I got this hole and this water covered. You're good.
And we
And-
think that we have to have it all figured out.
Right. So
That-
I woke up from that dream and man, I couldn't go back to sleep. Like
Yeah.
I had broke that barrier of, okay, God, talk to me. So that next day I called Cory and I was telling him about it. And Cory, what'd you think?
Well, first of all, he calls me in hysterics telling me that he's had this dream and explains it to me and says, "That's normal, right?"
I've been baptized. This is supposed to start happening. Is this how this goes?
I'm like, dude, we talk about getting baptized, getting you baptized. Then you have a dream and you're talking to the demons of your life, telling them you got to get out. And because I'm getting baptized. And then you tell me that you're sitting in a boat that just so happened Jesus is in the boat with you and he's mending up the hole in your boat, basically showing you that, hey, everything's all right. I'm here with you now. And I'm like, no, Steven, that is not normal. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
You've been chosen.
Wow.
Come on.
And I didn't realize how powerful that. I knew it was powerful,
Right.
but until I talked to Cory and realized, like, I thought this was just a Christian thing. All right, I've been accepted.
The wolf pack is complete.
So at this point, this was in the morning. I call him. I'm on my way home from work, and I'm thinking, "Holy smokes! Like this is big." So what else do you do when you get news like that? You start praying, and I'm driving, and I'm talking to God, and saying, "Look, God, I don't know what you have in store for me or what this means, but I'm here for it.
Come on.
Put me to work. Put me to work for the ministry, for you. Do something for Jesus." I said, just let me know what it is. And if I could describe a clear blue sky right in front of me, and I don't know how to explain it other than just imagine an upside down triangle.
And where are you sitting at this time? You're in the car.
I'm in the car driving
Yeah.
down the interstate, and all of a sudden, two lightning bolts from opposite ends of the skies come down together and meet in the middle right in front of me.
Wow.
And distance, I don't know, but
Like
it
a
wasn't a
V-shape.
storm. Yeah, it was like a V shape, exactly. The biggest, brightest lightning bolts I've ever seen in my life on a bright blue sunny sky. And that couldn't be anything other than God. It happened right after my prayer. Like me telling him, "Hey, give me a sign and put me to work."
You can see it all over your face. You're still shaking.
Oh man, like
You can see it all over your face.
I almost pulled over and just thought like, there's something here. He needs something now.
Where did the point meet? I've got to go
I'm going
there.
to try to find the bottom of that V to see.
Right. And so you said that you're waiting on that sign, that confirmation.
It's happening.
And I don't know that everybody gets it like I got it,
They don't.
but I needed it. Like you said, man, it was just like overnight. All of a sudden, he's religious.
Right. I had no idea your path and your journey, but I feel like I'm receiving these signs. You know, the podcast, that was huge for me. That was most definitely a sign.
That is awesome.
You know, and then being here today, and of all the people that I depend on in my life and I look up to, for it to be you, the one person that I do all of those things to help me through this journey, that's got to be another sign, because I would have never in a million years thought that you would be the one that would be here.
Oh man, if God hadn't slapped me in the face with lightning bolts and gave me all these like ideas of, man, I could tell you I believe, but I don't know that just reading a book is literally enough for me to believe. It's so hard. And when you're not indoctrinated as a kid, you're not told that these are all true. When you read them, and a lot like we talked about the other day, and I'd like to get into is, if you read all these, especially in the Old Testament, as literal facts,
Right.
man, it's so hard to get behind them.
I'm
Sure it
struggling.
is.
Yeah.
Sure it is. And the thing is, I just want to insert this here because God showed you these dreams. God showed you this crazy experience right there on the interstate with the lightning bolts coming down. And most people don't get like confirmation like that, but you had such strong unbelief. You needed a strong sign from God, and God knew that, to show you, I am real, and I can show you, and I can show you in ways that man could never explain, but you will know it's me. And the same way with Savannah, the great lightning bolt sign for you was your brother. Because he was such an unbeliever, and you never imagined in a million years that the person that would be talking faith and Jesus to you was your brother, and God transformed him, and to give you your lightning bolt effect is him.
And
that's the way God does it.
I'd like to add that I got all these things and really slapped in the face, and the last one was the lightning bolts, but I've not had any since then. It's not something that God has
I think
continually...
you've met your quota. You got to share these signs.
Right, and that's what I want to say. It's not like every day I'm getting hit with all this crazy stuff from God. I got what I needed to know that this is the path I need to take.
It sure is. And God did that with many men in the Bible, and many people that he dealt with. He showed them the same way. Moses, back in the day, God literally called him out of a desert and showed him a bush that was burning with fire on the branches. And he was so amazed because the fire set on that tree but did not consume it. And God literally reached out to Moses and said, I want to talk with you, and spoke out of that burning tree, that bush. And so God has ways. He's always had ways to show us supernatural ways when we are ready at that perfect timing to say. He gradually leads us up by baby steps, and then bam, now let me show you what you've been missing.
And I think that's all amazing. But like you said, him using my brother, if I'm going to blindly follow something, I'm going to trust that I would completely and blindly follow in faith what he's telling me, because I trust him and I know that he's doing right. He's going to do the right thing for me. You're not just going to lead me astray into some crazy belief.
That's exactly right.
And we serve the same God, and at some point he will give you the sign that you need to know that this is it. Well, if you just break it down to the points of like the children's stories of the Bible, we never had those. Like all those things that builds and understands faith, we never had them. And I needed a sign, and I know that you do as well. And at some point you will get it, and it may be as little as something like this podcast or just being here. But if I can give you any advice, keep studying, taking those leaps of faith, putting yourself out there, and it'll come. Something. Whatever he knows that you need, you will get.
She's got the signs. It's happening now. The transformation is going on now. And it's amazing.
I feel like the next step that I want to take, like you did, I want to start fresh and show him that I'm open. I'm ready for these signs. I think I want to be baptized.
Let's do it.
That's what we need to do. Let's do that.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm ready for that. I want that because I want this so much.
Let's schedule that for this week or whenever you're ready. You let us know. Me and Cory will come and we'll take care of it and put you on the right path.
And I that you're going to be there with me to do that makes it even more special.
Oh, and he can actually, we can do it together.
I know, you're going to make me cry. That means so much to me.
That would be amazing.
We, and I say we will drop anything at any point in time to come take care of it. If it's something that can save a soul and bring them closer to Jesus, especially my sister, you let us know. We'll do it whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. You just tell me.
We're getting down to the real deal now, man.
Yeah.
This is the big picture.
Let's wrap this up. This has been a great podcast. I think we've hit so many hurdles, and we've went down so many roads that I hope it wasn't too much, but we need to do some follow-ups. We need to do more on this. And
just because I'm getting baptized, I still have so many questions. I still, am looking for so many answers. But as I've been talking and asking people advice, I'm learning that I can't take everything so literally.
Exactly. I've said this many times, many times. When you're a child and you're growing up with your mom and your dad, if you think back to like when you were, if you can even remember when you were like, say a kindergartner, say before that, if you can remember any times like 3, 4 years old, did you know your mom's maiden name? Just think about it. Did you know her address? Did you know where she lived before she met, your dad? You didn't know that. At that time, you didn't know that. You didn't know how to tie your shoe.
Mm-mm.
You didn't know these things that are so simple. And that's the same way it is with following God. You learn as you go. There's small things that we all need to know and should know, but that's the beauty in it. You don't have to know it, and just because somebody else knows it and you don't know it, or they don't know it and you know a little more, that's just the way it is. That's the way God uses people and comes into people's lives at certain times, at any time He pleases. It's His timing, and His timing is always on time. And so you just, little by little, you learn what God gives you. And I promise you, God will give you the relationships. God will build the bonds. God will bring you into the situations and cross paths with the people that you need. Because you first find the door, Jesus, then everything will be laid out for you.
awesome. Savannah, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Awesome. Cory, let's do it again.
I'm just overwhelmed. I'm so excited.